r/askreddit. What is the craziest encounter of rich kid syndrome that you have experienced? A friend I met at uni flew from Auckland to London for a week to go shopping. Clothes were cheaper in London, so to him it made sense. His parents were from Singapore and had no idea just how much cheaper cars were in New Zealand. So when he said he needed $70K for a Toyota Corolla, they gave him the money and he bought a used BMW M3. When he went home for the summer, he asked if I could mind the car for him. Given his dad had pretty much cut him off at that point, he just said I had to pay for insurance on it and I could treat it like my own. But as a 19-year-old sharing a flat and barely getting by, there was no way I could cover the cost of insurance, let alone petrol. I had a scholarship to private school for my secondary education. 11-18, we were by no means poor, but compared to the people who were paying full school fees, I was a peasant. The vast majority of the students were wealthy, and about half of them were spoiled little brats. Most of the kids got given cars for their 17th birthday in anticipation of passing their driving tests. One boy in particular in my year had a September birthday, so was one of the first to take his test, and he had a huge house kitten, so he already knew how to drive. You can drive on private land at any age here. On the day he passed his test, he got dropped off back at his school in his shiny new sports car. I don't know what type it was. I jaff about cars, but everyone else seemed impressed. He picked up a couple of friends to go for a spin, and before he got 100 meters up the road, he completely wrecked the fucking car. His dad bought him a new one the next day and he complained that it was the wrong color. Teacher here. Two spring to mind. One, my first teaching job was at a private middle school in one of the wealthiest enclaves in the United States. I taught a kid who told me he didn't finish his homework because his helicopter had stalled over the weekend, so he couldn't leave his family's island. He was telling the truth. Same kid was also a huge pain in the ass who wanted to misbehave with the cool kids, and then would lie through his teeth while crying when held accountable. His parents knew he was a jerk and cared enough to bring me a case of wine from their vineyard as a gift every parent-teacher conference or before the holidays, but they didn't care enough to discipline their kid. A long time ago I was dating a rich girl, not insane rich, but rich enough. Well, I'm from Norway and we have a recycling system for plastic bottles. You get like 10 cents per bottle. Her family had a little mountain of empty bottles and crates in their warehouse. They had a warehouse. I asked her dad, what are you gonna do with these for, which he replied something like, oh, those are from our employees' staff parties from a couple years back. I just haven't had the time to get rid of them. Logically I told him that I'd recycle them for a percentage. He said keep it all, guy. So I did. I had to do multiple trips to several different stores, but it ended up being like $1,300 bucks, which was insane money for me at the time. I bought a guitar for the money. I realize now it's not a crazy story, but for me it was insane to earn that much money for 4-5 hours of work because her family couldn't be asked to do it. Edit. Some of you want to know what guitar I got, and it was a Squire Jagmaster. I know. Luckily I spent the rest on rent and weed. I was 20 or 21, so there you go. I was a catch. I was that poor kid who ended up getting a scholarship to a ridiculous private school. The one thing that stood out massively for me was probably how much people cared about what everyone else's parents did. Like your parents' achievements counted for yourself. My daddy just brought a new plane. Yes, a literal statement. So what does your dad do? When I replied fuck all, they laughed and thought I was being cool about it. Humble rich kid. I was at a club at my college town and my roommate's new friend who drove a Raptor was at the bar. I started shooting shit and we were getting along, so I offered to buy a Y-bomb vodka Red Bull shot. Being as wealthy as he is, he said you don't have to do that man, save your money. Round will be on me. I explained to him it didn't bother, I was having a good time, and insisted I buy the shot. Immediately after that, he pulls out a black Amex and purchases the nicest VIP booth in the club, around $3K. Then ask what drink packages they have and ask if he could buy 2 bottles on top of max package. Looks at me and goes tit for tat. Safe to say I don't recall much after that. A rich girl I knew was driving her brand new sports car with her friend in the front seat and friend's boyfriend in the back. She's doing 80 in a 30, so of course she loses control. She goes flying out the window. Girl in the passenger seat is buckled in so she's okay. Boyfriend goes flying out the back and cracks his skull open. His brain is exposed and he's babbling incoherently. The rich girl is crying about her car as this is happening. The boyfriend nearly dies, but somehow recovers with various titanium plates in his skull. Rich girl fucks up her back, but refuses to wear a back brace because they're ugly. Her parents buy her a brand new sports car a week later. When boyfriend starts the process to sue their asses for hospital bills, they leave the country to live in their villa somewhere. Italy, I think. TLDR. Rich girl almost kills someone. Gets sports car and no punishment for it. I attended a boarding school for 8th and 9th grade and lived across the hall from the kid of a major CEO. Won't name. This kid was a little shit to say the least. On multiple occasions, he would walk into my room while I was doing HW or whatever and would start going through my clothing and ridiculing my taste in belts. WTF. This belt is a piece of shit. Why don't you get Gucci? I would respond, I like that belt, and I don't need Gucci to look nice. I remember once he was saying he didn't want to microwave mac and cheese anymore, and he offered me $50 to make him mac and cheese whenever he wanted. I accepted instantly. Barely made any. Well worth the $50. When I was still in high school, I had this buddy who literally opened the door to his house and said, "Welcome to the lifestyle of the rich." I went to an inner city school. Most of my friends lived below the poverty line. One day we made a $20 bet and I won. After paying up, he started begging for the money back because his parents only give him $20 for lunch a day and he didn't want to use his own money. When I refused, he told a teacher who made me give it back because I'm not old enough to gamble, but did tell him not to make bets if he couldn't pay. I proceeded to blow my nose with the 20, pull it up and toss it at him. The teacher didn't say a thing. I dated an insanely rich guy. His parents were rich, at least, like private island. Friends had little castles, etc. Anyways, his half-brother was a total prick. His dad is one of the top lawyers in the UK, so naturally, he likes to argue, in a very condescending way. So one time we got into a debate, his stance being that we shouldn't use taxpayer money to educate the general public on safety, and that if those people weren't educated, they should just die, etc etc. It was getting a bit ridiculous, so I finally asked him straight up, thinking it would be a turning point for him. So do you think the actual lives of people who were born in less fortunate circumstances than you are not valuable enough to save? He said yes without hesitating. This man genuinely believes his life is worth more than others just because he was born into wealth. I worked at a summer camp a few years ago while in college. We had a few high school kids working there too. On the weekends we had a day off and 90% of the staff spent the day at the laundromat doing laundry. I noticed this one high schooler struggling with his laundry. I told him I wouldn't do it for him, but I would teach him how, as it is a valuable life skill. He was getting frustrated with the easiest instructions and kept saying how his manslave did all the cleaning for him. I questioned the phrasing and he said that's what his butler preferred to be called. Turns out this kid's dad is some sort of royalty in Ireland or Scotland, I forget. I saved the kid's clothes from a full container of laundry detergent. My first roommate in college was a girl from Mexico who told me her father owned a lot of warehouses. Cue my cocked eyebrow. She and I didn't get along from the get-go. I come from a blue-collar family, second ever on my dad's side to go to college and first on my mom's side. I had to work the entire time I went to school, which to her did not compute. She would tell me I'm going to Paris for the weekend and I'd be like, oh, okay, have fun. I have to work a double on Saturday. She told her dad something that ended up with her dad buying her a condo in town while also paying for the dorm. So I lived in a single most of the year. Her dad bought her a brand new Jeep Grand Cherokee which wasn't good enough, and a few days later I saw her in a Cadillac Escalade. I was an asshole though and totally borrowed her Louis Vuitton heels a few times while she was in Paris or whatever. Endicott College. She wasn't an isolated case. Not scathing like most of the ones on here. I grew up attending a private school in a developing country, so a lot of my classmates were in the 1% of the country. Whenever we'd be swimming in the school pool, one friend of ours in particular would always remark that swimming is more fun if the pool has a current or waves. To which I had no idea what he was talking about and generally thought he was just being imaginative. One day he invited me over to his house for swimming and he had a 50-foot indoor pool that generated a current waves. He wasn't lying. They are a lot more fun.